Hi guys, I am here with another story for you, another true short story of God's divine touch, miracles in tough times. It is getting ready to storm here. As you can see, it's getting pretty dark and it's windy. It's been thundering off and on. Well, this story is called All She Had Was Faith and $5. And this one is by Kenneth Heacock. My daughter hadn't said much all afternoon during her weekly visit. I couldn't even get her to smile, which was unusual. Honey, I can sense there's something wrong. Anything you want to talk about? She sighed and shook her head. But I can be persuasive. She finally broke down and said, Dad, our financial problems are overwhelming me. We've been working so hard, but we only seem to get deeper in the hole. And we don't want a handout. I'm so worried I can't even think straight. I knew just what to say, patting her hand. I nodded and said, Let me tell you a story about your great-grandmother. As you know, I grew up on a dairy farm just outside a tiny town called Sac City, Iowa. When I was a little boy, my grandmother lived with us for a while. She was a very religious woman. Many of her ancestors had been German ministers, and she shared their strong faith and belief in God, hard work, and giving to the Lord. We didn't have nursing homes in those days or Social Security. Family took care of family. Having borne 13 children, my grandma had plenty of homes to visit. I loved it when she stayed with us on our farm. Our large wooden frame farmhouse boasted a rambling front porch. On warm Iowa summer evenings, Grandma sat in her rocking chair on that porch after having helped with chores indoors in spite of her aging rheumatism. When finished with morning chores, she would rock in her chair for a while and observe the activities of the farm. Our porch gave a good view of our land that sprawled across acres of flat Iowa terrain. The harnesses of our 2 teams of horses jingled as Dad readied Bob, Prince, Ted, and Daisy for the day's work. No, we didn't have gasoline tractors back then. Your grandpa used steam-driven tractors to operate, the threshing machines. After the wheat or barley was threshed, separating the grain from the steams were stacked and used as bedding for the animals. Nothing was wasted. Your 2 aunts and uncle and I had a great time sliding down the sides of those haystacks. On cold Iowa winter nights, the fireplace in our living room invited our family to be together. Grandma loved to sit in front of that fireplace, reading her Bible every night. I remember curling up beside the rhythmic creaking of that rocking chair and listening as she read aloud Bible stories, making them come to life. She read the Bible in its entirety several times throughout her lifetime. God will take care of you if you do your part. First, no questions asked, she would say. She'd sit with her high-top button shoes, floor-length comfortable dress, and ever-present apron, smoking her corncob pipe. I remember the sweet smell of tobacco filling the room, mingling with the aroma of the logs burning in the fire, the smoke curling around her head. We knew she was finished enjoying her smoke for the day when we heard the hack, hack, hack of that corncob pipe on the arm of her rocker, knocking the ashes into the ash bowl below. In 1932, I graduated from high school. The Depression was at its darkest stages, and we lost our farm. Many people throughout the country had no food to eat. Food lines were everywhere. Businesses and homes were lost. People couldn't get jobs. It was a frightening time. I had been dreaming of going to college for some time, but knew we couldn't afford it, so I forced myself to accept the situation and looked for a job doing anything I could to help my family. My disappointment crushed me. At that time, a recruiter from a private college called Carleton, 230 miles away in Minnesota, came to Sac City looking for potential students. I had been a good student in high school, especially math and science, and I was an athlete. The recruiter was impressed with me and said he'd get back to me. I remember staring in disbelief at the letter informing me of the scholarship. I could barely breathe, afraid if I took a deep breath I would wake up and discover it was all just a dream. College. The possibility of a bright future was within my grasp after all. Then reality set in. I had no money for transportation. How would I even get there? And if I could get there, how would I eat? There were no jobs in Sac City, and no way to earn any money for the necessities. My dream vanished. There was no use even thinking about it. It just wasn't possible. The letdown threatened to overwhelm me as I stared out the window, crumpling the letter in my hand. It was just then that my grandmother burst into action. After watching me mope around the house for days, she sat me down and said, "Kenneth, you have to stop thinking so negatively. It's not what you have done, it's not what you don't have, it's what you do have. And what you do have is a scholarship, the ability to work hard, and a God that will provide the rest. Quit worrying about the rest, it'll come. Just go to college and work hard. Everything else will fall into place." Then she took her wrinkled hands that had labored for 83 years, hands that had cradled 13 children, and dug into the folds of her long skirt. Withdrawing from her deep pocket a $5 bill, she tucked the bill into my shirt pocket. "You take this $5, it's all I have, but with this and faith in the Almighty, all your needs will be provided, I'm sure of it." She smiled and hugged me. Not only did she have faith in God, but she also had faith in my abilities. So with nothing but the clothes on my back, butterflies in my stomach, and a $5 bill in my pocket, I set out on the road to my future. My childhood home I had always loved stretched out behind me as I hitchhiked east on Highway 20 and then north on Interstate 35, totaling 230 miles to Northfield, Minnesota. Throughout those 4 years at Carleton College, I worked as a dishwasher in a restaurant, and that's where I met the owner's daughter, your mother. I graduated in 1936 after studying zoology and chemistry, and have been teaching high school ever since. We haven't been financially rich, but we've always been able to pay our bills and put food on the table for you 6 kids. God has been faithful. Grandma died in 1939 at the age of 90. Her faith never wavered, even during the Depression. She didn't need money to know the great provider will meet our needs, even during difficult times, as long as we fulfill our tasks and keep moving forward. Faith in God and $5 was all she ever needed. My daughter hugged me, and a smile began to spread across her face. "Thanks, Dad. I knew you'd have the answer." And that is the end of the story, guys. With your faith in God, that's all you need. Because with God, anything is possible. Just always remind yourself of that. Because God can do anything. God can do anything.